Environment changing is more discovery up the North Passageway, an Arctic Sea path polar of the Canada continent. Could it vestnik an era of more than goods navigation about the top of the planet? Behind in the 19th age down there was a racing to map and swim the North Passageway via the Arctic Sea as a label among the polar Atlantic and polar silent. Explorers would get sea vessels up Greenland's western shore, later try to weaving via Canada's Arctic islands, up departure downward the Bering Passage among Alaska and Russia. The issue was how, though in the summer the path was generally locked by impervious ice pack. On one of the top-known expeditions, how of the UK's Sir John Franklin in 1845, all 129 team members lost following their two-where got jammed. Present, more than rather than 170 year after, a heating Arctic tool how the path is more available for a few months every summer. For navigation firms conveying consumer goods of China or Japan to Europe or the east shore of the US, the passageway would cut thousands of miles off journeys how now go via the Panama or Suez canals. The Canada by the government is surely encouraging how the will be the instance. At the time it is yet a dangerous industry, in ice left a severe issue. Tim Keane, officer of Arctic operative for the vessel's proprietor, Canada Marine Transportation Company FedNav, was on executive board the Nunavik for the travel. He says how the travel was nicely dull, the vessel didn't include to expend days fighting via ice pack. Instead of it did the travel of Quebec to China in 26 days, more than rather than 2 weeks less than rather than the 41 date back via the Panama Channel. Of a range spot of type it makes terrible feeling to use the North Passageway while he's accessible to thou, he says. Time FedNav doesn't include instant plans to use the path once again, it remnant a opportunity depending on the goods' purpose, and the period of year. Proprietor, Dutch business Scandinavian Great Bulk Communication, told subsequently how we expect and wait to do it once again. At the time the quantity of sea vessels departure via the passageway is cheap, but is growing. The compares in 18 were in full in 2016, and 16 in 2015. Canada Logistic Business Understand Sea expects navigation levels in the passageway to hold increasing, led by more than mountain projects through the area. CEO Niels Graham says his business is rather bull in regulation of provided sea supporting for projects how are in the region, and putting to supporting how. He says how as more than inorganic mountain projects go in manufacture, the raw material will requirement to be sent to planet markets, and sites will requirement to be resupplied. Yet, several Arctic experts are not confident how the North Passageway will always be a lively business trading path. Malte Humpert, the founding member of the Arctic Institution Believe Tank, is amongst them. He says the passageway is a less than precise cut-off stock option for navigation rather than the Northern Sea Path, that rest on the rusky Arctic shore among Asia and Europe. He points out how the North Passageway has several geographical disadvantages, consisting the Lot Islands how hold the area more than hammered in ice rather than the rusky path. Some challenges for the Canada path is a absence of profound water supply ports and bounded searching and save capabilities. Down there's as well the ongoing discrepancy above accessing to the passageway. Canada claims independence, time the US and other believe the passageway to be world. And while it comes to levels of invest and growth, the broad polar Arctic area of Alaska, Canada's northern territories and Greenland is now closing over the rusky Arctic. Russia is hard to increase its northern economics, in plans to put millions of dollars above the following few year to construct nuke-powered ice pack breakers and evolve seaport infrastructure facilities on the Northern Sea Path. Canada is yet planner to reconstruct its one profound water seaport in accessing to the Arctic, Churchill-on-Hudson Gulf, in the provincial of Manitoba. World Trading Secretary Mr. Carr says the job will outdoor up and completely various planet for Canada's northern regions. Jessica Shadian is CEO of Arctic 360, an organization how promotes the polar Arctic and the geopolitical significance of steadily putting down there. She sees its economical capacity as extensive, but says Canada is creature sluggish to recognize its own polar and the capacity how it has. Instead of Ms. Shadian adds how China is more than close looking at evolving the polar us Arctic as portion of an aspiring schema to convert its protection to Europe and for. She wants Canadians and Americans to attention more than on the economical returns the area can give. While you begin thought on the polar us Arctic as in growing economics, it engenders a entire various thought amongst investors, she says.